This story is titled, I was shocked to see my girlfriend's ex on my birthday party guest list. Thought it was a mistake until he actually showed up with a gift for her instead of me. She was thrilled, calling it better than this loser's present. So I thanked everyone and disappeared. But next day my phone blew up with 27 missed calls after what I had done. Subreddit, I'm a 31-year-old guy who's been running my own home automation and smart systems business for the past 6 years. What started as a simple operation in my garage, installing basic smart locks and security cameras, has grown into something I'm genuinely proud of. Now we're the go-to company for high-end smart home setups and comprehensive security systems. We're talking about billionaire mansions and corporate headquarters, places where they actually care about who walks through their doors and have the budget to ensure nothing goes wrong. 3 years ago, I met Victoria at some pretentious wine bar opening. You know the type of event I'm talking about. Overpriced drinks, networking vultures circling the room, and awkward small talk about wine varietals that nobody really understands. But despite the insufferable atmosphere, she caught my attention immediately. Victoria was 29, worked as an operations manager at a tech company, and had this sharp intelligence combined with an ambitious drive that I found genuinely attractive. She was the kind of person where you could tell she was going places in life, and when we clicked that first night, it felt like something that didn't happen often for me. Before I dive into this story, let me introduce you to the crew that made everything that followed absolutely legendary. First, there's Trevor, my best friend since our college days. By day, he works in IT, but by night, he's a stand-up comedian with absolutely zero filter when it comes to commentary about people. This guy had Victoria's number from day one and wasn't shy about sharing his observations. He nicknamed her Princess PowerPoint because she would literally create presentations for everything in her life. I'm talking about situations where she'd say things like, "Babe, I've prepared a slide deck on our weekend plans with a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis." Then there's Elena, my older sister, who works as a criminal defense attorney and has developed what I can only describe as a certified BS detector. Elena has this protective big sister instinct where she can smell trouble on people before they even open their mouths to speak. She took one look at Victoria at our first family dinner together, leaned over to whisper in my ear and said, "This one's calculating. Watch your back." I also need to mention Max, my 4-year-old golden retriever who's dumber than a box of rocks, but loyal as they come. This dog once managed to get his head stuck in a cereal box and just completely accepted his fate instead of trying to get free. I found him like that 30 minutes later, tail wagging enthusiastically, completely content with his new cardboard helmet. That pretty much sums up Max's approach to life. There's also Sophia, a mutual friend from college who works as a fitness trainer. Picture someone who could probably deadlift your car but still laughs at the worst dad jokes you've ever heard. We'd always been friends, nothing more, but she becomes important to this story later on. Finally, there's Melissa, Victoria's entitled younger sister who treats service workers like they're her personal assistants. This woman once demanded to speak to a manager at Starbucks because her latte foam wasn't Instagram-worthy enough. She's basically everything that was wrong with Victoria, but amplified to an almost cartoonish degree. The Brandon problem. From day one with Victoria, I heard about Brandon, her ex-boyfriend. They had dated for 4 years and broke up about a year before we met. According to her version of events, the relationship ended because he wasn't ready for the level of commitment she deserved. Looking back now, I realize that was probably just her translation for "guy dodged a bullet and she never got over it." Here's what should have been my first major red flag. Brandon's name came up constantly in our conversations. I'm talking about everything. Brandon got promoted at work, Brandon bought a Tesla, Brandon's mom was in the hospital, Brandon this, Brandon that, Brandon everything. It was like he was still an active participant in her daily life, even though they'd supposedly been broken up for over a year. Trevor, being the observant friend that he is, actually started keeping count during our double dates. His personal record was 27 Brandon mentions in a single dinner. After that particular evening, he pulled me aside and said, "Dude, at this point, Brandon's more involved in your relationship than you are." Elena was characteristically more direct with her assessment. "She's using you as a placeholder until he comes back. Mark my words." I should have listened to both of them. But you know how it is when you think you're in love. 7 months into the relationship, things seem to be progressing normally on the surface. We weren't living together, but we spent most nights at either my place or her downtown apartment. I'd bought my house 5 years earlier after landing some major corporate contracts. Nothing crazy fancy, but it's mine. It's located on the outskirts of town, where I actually have space to breathe, and it came with enough room for a proper home office and a decent-sized yard for Max to terrorize the local squirrel population. Max, by the way, loved Victoria initially, though this dog has proven to be a terrible judge of character over the years. He once tried to befriend a raccoon that was clearly plotting his demise. But whenever Victoria came over, he'd get excited and bring her his favorite tennis ball, like she was the greatest thing since bacon treats were invented. The first real warning sign came when Victoria's company needed a security system upgrade. Since that's literally what I do for a living, I offered to help out as a professional courtesy. Big mistake, huge mistake. This woman turned what should have been a simple consultation into a 4-hour PowerPoint presentation about synergistic cross-promotional opportunities between our brands. She had slides with charts analyzing my own business like she was presenting to a board of directors. I went ahead and installed their system anyway. Solid work, fair price, everyone happy. But then Victoria started helping with my marketing efforts. She redesigned my entire website without asking, added her email address to client communications, and started signing her name on my invoices like we were suddenly business partners. When I asked what the hell she was doing, she explained that she was optimizing my brand presence for maximum market penetration. Elena's response when I told her about this development was priceless. She's treating your business like a subsidiary she just acquired. Next thing you know, she'll want equity in a company car. Trevor was more colorful in his assessment. Bro, she's colonizing your life one PowerPoint at a time. But the real setup came when my birthday approached in September. Victoria insisted on what she called curating the perfect networking experience for my special day. Not throwing a party, mind you, curating a networking experience for my birthday. She booked this pretentious restaurant downtown, the kind of place where they charge $45 for 4 pieces of asparagus and call it deconstructed cuisine. We're talking about the type of establishment where the waiters have strong opinions about your wine choices and the portions could fit comfortably in a shot glass. The guest list initially made perfect sense. It included my usual crew plus Elena, who was driving down from Boston because she wouldn't miss what she was already calling this disaster for anything in the world. Everything seemed normal enough until the day before my birthday, when Victoria dropped her bomb. I was reviewing security camera footage for a client when she casually mentioned, "Oh, by the way, I invited Brandon too." I had to replay the sentence in my head to make sure I'd heard her correctly. "Brandon? Your ex-boyfriend Brandon?" I asked, looking up from my laptop. "Yes, Brandon. He's just a friend now," she replied, with the kind of casual tone you'd use to discuss the weather. "And honestly, he has amazing connections in the tech space. This could be transformative for your business development." She actually used the word transformative about inviting her ex-boyfriend to my birthday dinner. But she wasn't finished with her announcements. "Plus, Melissa's driving up from Charlotte," she continued. "She's been dying to meet everyone and celebrate with us." This was particularly interesting because Melissa lived 3 hours away and had shown exactly zero interest in my existence for the past 3 years. Suddenly, she couldn't wait to celebrate my birthday with people she'd never met. I immediately called Elena to process this insanity. "Let me understand this correctly," Elena said in her lawyer voice that makes defendants confess to crimes they didn't commit. "She invited her ex-boyfriend to your birthday dinner and is marketing it as a business opportunity?" "That's about the size of it," I confirmed. "And her sister, who treats you like furniture, is suddenly your biggest fan?" Elena was quiet for a moment, which is never a good sign. "Brother, this woman thinks you're an idiot. She's setting something up, and you're the only one who doesn't see it coming. I should have canceled the entire thing right then and there. But I was genuinely curious to see exactly how far she'd push this absolute insanity. You know what? Let's do it. Should be educational," I told Elena. She laughed in that way that suggested she was already planning her courtroom-style cross-examination. "I'll be there with front-row seats to this train wreck. The night of my birthday dinner, I knew something was off before we even sat down. Victoria had been glued to her phone all day, texting and giggling in that way that seemed far too intimate for casual conversation. The restaurant was exactly as pretentious as I'd expected. The kind of place where they describe every dish like it's performance art, and the wine list requires taking out a small business loan. We claimed our table for 12 people. Elena had insisted on coming, and I was grateful for the backup. Everyone started arriving right on schedule. Trevor showed up first, took one look at the menu, and whispered, "Dude, they're charging $35 for mac and cheese. I hope your business insurance covers public humiliation." Elena arrived looking like she was ready for trial, sharp suit, no-nonsense expression, positioning herself where she could observe everything that was about to unfold. Our other friends filtered in gradually. My business partner Derek, Tom and his wife, and two other couples we hung out with regularly. Everyone was there except Brandon and Melissa, but Victoria kept checking her phone every 15 seconds, like she was coordinating some kind of military operation. 30 minutes past our reservation time, the show finally began. Brandon walked in carrying a bouquet of white roses like he was the romantic lead in some cheesy movie. But here's what made the situation infinitely worse. He walked straight to Victoria, completely ignoring the birthday boy, and presented the flowers like we were at his event instead of mine. "These are for you, beautiful. Happy spring," he said with a smile that made my skin crawl. It was late September in Atlanta. There were literally frost warnings on the weather app, and this clown was talking about spring like he'd just stepped out of a romantic comedy. Victoria's reaction was the nail in the coffin. She didn't just accept the flowers, she lit up like Christmas morning. "White roses! You remembered they're my absolute favorite. God, you always had the better taste. So sweet of you." Then she turned to the entire table and announced, "Everyone, look what Brandon brought me. Isn't that incredibly thoughtful?" The silence that followed was absolutely deafening. Elena's pen stopped moving mid-sentence. Trevor's mouth fell open like a cartoon character. Our other friends were staring like they'd just witnessed a car accident in slow motion and couldn't look away. Brandon finally acknowledged my existence with a casual nod. "Happy birthday, man. Thanks for letting me crash the party." Then he sat down directly across from Victoria, like he'd planned the seating chart himself. Elena leaned over and whispered, "Is this actually happening right now?" Before I could answer, Melissa made her grand entrance 20 minutes after Brandon. She was wearing enough perfume to fumigate an entire building, immediately complained about parking, and started taking selfies with Brandon's flowers like they were some kind of romantic gesture she'd personally orchestrated. What followed was the most surreal dining experience of my entire life. I sat at the head of the table, supposedly the guest of honor, while Brandon and Victoria had what was essentially a reunion dinner with an audience of increasingly uncomfortable witnesses. They shared inside jokes that nobody else understood, reminisced about places they'd been together, and discussed people from their shared past like the rest of us weren't even sitting there. "Remember that weekend in Savannah when it rained?" Brandon asked Victoria, with the kind of nostalgic smile that made everyone else want to disappear. "Oh my God, yes!" she laughed, her eyes lighting up. "We ended up spending the whole day in that tiny wine bar talking for hours. You two look so perfect together in those photos," Melissa chimed in like she was directing this entire performance for maximum awkwardness. Elena was taking notes now. Actual notes like she was documenting evidence for a criminal case. Trevor kicked me under the table and mouthed, "What the actual hell is this?" This wasn't just disrespectful anymore. It was orchestrated humiliation, and I was completely done being the audience for their romantic reunion. The dinner dragged on for another hour and a half of pure torture. Brandon dominated every single conversation, positioning himself as the expert on everything from wine pairings to vacation destinations. Victoria hung on his every word like he was delivering profound wisdom instead of the most basic small talk imaginable. Meanwhile, Melissa documented everything with her phone like she was the official photographer of their rekindled romance. I sat there watching my girlfriend have what was essentially a date with her ex-boyfriend at my birthday dinner, while everyone else squirmed in secondhand embarrassment. The other couples at our table were exchanging glances that clearly said, "Are we really witnessing this right now?" When the waiter finally brought out the cake with candles, Brandon actually started the happy birthday song for my birthday, like he was the host of this entire event. Victoria put her arm around me for the first time all evening, a gesture so obviously performative that it felt more insulting than if she'd just ignored me completely. "Make a wish, babe," she said with a smile that looked like it belonged in a commercial. I stared at those candles and everything suddenly crystallized in my mind. This wasn't just about Brandon being there, or even about the flowers. This was about a woman who thought she could humiliate me in front of all our friends, and I'd just smile and take it like some kind of doormat. But here's what nobody at that table knew, including Victoria. There was supposed to be a much bigger announcement that night. We'd been engaged for 5 months. I'd been planning to announce our wedding date at this dinner, maybe even raise a toast to our future together. Her parents had already put down $18,000 for their half of the venue and catering costs. My deposit was sitting in escrow, waiting for the final confirmation. The engagement ring was actually in my jacket pocket, not because I was planning another proposal, but because I'd been thinking about upgrading it for the announcement. It's funny how quickly plans can change when you're watching your fiancée flirt with her ex-boyfriend at your own birthday party. I made my wish, blew out the candles, and stood up with the kind of clarity that only comes from seeing a situation for exactly what it is. Actually, I announced to the table, my voice cutting through the chatter, I have an announcement to make. You could have heard a pin drop in that restaurant. Every conversation at our table stopped mid-sentence. Victoria and I won't be getting married after all. Victoria's face went through about 7 different colors, none of them found in nature. The transformation was almost fascinating to watch in real time. "What are you talking about?" she hissed, her voice barely containing her panic. "Brandon, since you seem to be running this show tonight, the check's all yours," I continued, maintaining eye contact with him. "Thanks for hosting my birthday dinner, man." "Oh, and congratulations on whatever this is," I added, gesturing between him and Victoria. Brandon's confident smile evaporated like water on hot pavement. "What? I can't." "Oh, and Brandon," I continued, pulling out my phone with deliberate calm, 7264. "That's your access code to my house, right? Spells BRAN on the keypad. Pretty creative choice." The table absolutely erupted. Trevor literally shouted, "Oh shit!" loud enough for half the restaurant to hear and turn around to stare at us. Elena sat back with the most satisfied expression I'd ever seen on her face, like she'd been waiting for this moment her entire life. Victoria jumped up from her chair, panic completely replacing the smugness that had been there moments before. "You can't just cancel our wedding like this!" "Watch me," I replied calmly. "I've got months of security footage of you two having your little reunion tours in my house while I was traveling for work. Consider the engagement officially terminated." Elena stood up too, suddenly in full attorney mode. "Security footage? Oh, this is absolutely beautiful." Brandon tried desperately to salvage the situation. "Look, man, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think," I cut him off. "You've been playing house in my actual house while I've been working to pay for her ring. But hey, since you like the place so much, maybe you can start contributing to the mortgage." Melissa's jaw was practically on the floor. "Wait, you were engaged? When were you going to tell anyone about this?" "We were going to announce it tonight," I replied, pulling the ring box from my jacket and setting it on the table for everyone to see. "Surprise! Plans change." "Brandon's got the dinner check," I continued, looking around the table at all the shocked faces. "Victoria's got her flowers, and I've got some wedding vendors to cancel. Thanks for coming to my birthday, everyone. This has been incredibly educational." Elena grabbed her purse and stood up with the kind of theatrical flair that only comes from years of courtroom experience. "And I've got some fascinating legal insights about adultery and property rights to discuss with my brother later." As I walked toward the exit, I could hear Brandon frantically explaining to the waiter that he'd need to call someone about paying for a $520 dinner for 12 people. Victoria was screaming about how I couldn't unilaterally dissolve an engagement like some kind of business contract. Trevor and Elena followed me outside into the cool September air. Elena was practically glowing with satisfaction. "That," she said, "was the most beautiful public execution I've ever witnessed. Brandon's in there having a complete breakdown about the check, and your ex-fiancée looks like her entire world just collapsed." My phone was already buzzing with frantic texts from Victoria, but I was done with all of it. It was time for the real show to begin. That night I did what I should have done months earlier, conducted a full forensic review of my home security system. Trevor came over with pizza, and Elena showed up with drinks and her legal notepad because, in her words, "This is better than any case I've worked on, and I'm documenting everything for posterity." Max was absolutely thrilled to have everyone over. He kept bringing us his toys like this was the world's best party, completely oblivious to the fact that we were about to uncover months of betrayal in high definition. Every few minutes, he'd drop a tennis ball at someone's feet and wag his tail like he was contributing to our investigation. My house has one of our premium security packages installed cameras at every entry point, motion sensors throughout, smart locks with detailed access logs, the whole setup. I'd shown Victoria how everything worked when we started getting serious, explained where the cameras were positioned, and given her access codes for safety when she stayed over. What seemed like trust and transparency at the time had turned into the most comprehensive documentation of adultery imaginable. What I found was significantly worse than I'd imagined. Brandon had been coming over every single time I traveled for work, which was usually twice a month for client installations. The security footage showed them arriving together like they owned the place, with Brandon using his own access code 7264, which literally spells BRAN on the keypad. They were acting like a married couple in my house, using my Netflix account, eating my food, sleeping in my bed, and walking my dog. The footage even showed Brandon giving Max treats, essentially bribing my own dog to like him while he was screwing my girlfriend. The level of calculated betrayal was almost impressive in its thoroughness. "Oh, this is rich," Trevor said, pointing at the screen where Brandon was wearing my Georgia Tech hoodie and feeding Max. "He's literally wearing your clothes and feeding your dog. The sheer audacity of this man is almost admirable." Elena was furious in that cold, controlled way that makes her such an effective attorney. "This isn't just adultery, it's criminal trespass. She gave him unauthorized access to your property without your knowledge or consent. This is prosecutable." Max, completely unaware that his treat supplier was the villain of this entire story, was currently in the process of destroying a tennis ball and occasionally barking at his own reflection in the TV screen. The access logs told the complete story with brutal clarity. Brandon's code had been used 19 times over 4 months, always on days when I was out of town, always for extended periods. My smart doorbell had captured him, arriving with overnight bags like he was moving in. My interior cameras showed them cooking together, watching movies, and acting like a couple in my living room while I was working hundreds of miles away to pay for her engagement ring. I immediately revoked all access codes except my own and changed every password in the entire system. Then I sent Victoria a single text message with a screenshot from the security footage. Brandon entering my house with a timestamp from 4 weeks ago when I was installing a system in Tampa. Her response was immediate. "We need to talk." My response was a gif of Samuel L. Jackson saying no. Elena reviewed all the evidence like she was preparing for the trial of the century. "Professional advice. Don't engage directly. Document everything and let her incriminate herself further." Next, I handled the business relationship aspect of this disaster. Since I'd installed Victoria's company's security system as a professional courtesy, I sent her boss a carefully worded email explaining that due to a personal conflict of interest, I was assigning a different account manager from my team to handle their service needs going forward. I copied my operations director to make it official business communication rather than personal drama. The translation was clear to anyone reading between the lines. "Your employee has been using our professional relationship to facilitate her personal affair, and I'm no longer comfortable with the arrangement." But it was documented as a standard business decision, keeping everything above board. Then came what I can only describe as the masterpiece of coincidental timing. 4 months earlier, I'd purchased a condo downtown as a rental investment. It was pure coincidence that it happened to be in Victoria's building. The opportunity came through a business contact, the numbers made sense financially, and I'd mentioned owning rental property to Victoria without specifying the exact location. My unit was 4F, while hers was 4B, same floor, completely different lives, and about to become very relevant to this story. A week earlier, my tenant had reported water damage in the bathroom ceiling. I'd asked my property manager, Luis, to schedule a plumber, but the timing hadn't worked out with the tenant's schedule until now. With everything that had happened, I decided this repair needed immediate attention. "Luis," I texted, "that water damage in 4F needs immediate attention. Could be affecting other units on the floor too." Luis responded immediately. "Already scheduled emergency plumbing for tomorrow morning. Building management will inspect adjacent units as a precaution." Trevor raised his drink in a toast when I told him about this development. "To the most poetic coincidence in revenge history." Elena raised her wine glass with a satisfied smile. "To karma having a law degree. It's not revenge," I said, maintaining my innocence. "It's responsible property management." The beauty of the situation was its complete legitimacy. I genuinely owned rental property in her building. There was legitimate water damage that needed repair, and building management had every right to inspect adjacent units if there was potential structural damage. Everything was above board, properly documented, and entirely coincidental. Well, mostly coincidental. 3 days after the birthday nuclear option, I was at Elena's apartment helping her rearrange furniture when someone started pounding on her door like they were trying to break it down. Elena looked through the peephole and grinned like it was Christmas morning. Well, your ex-fiancée is here and she looks completely unhinged." She opened the door to reveal Victoria looking like she hadn't slept since the restaurant incident. Her mascara was streaked, her hair was disheveled, and she had the desperate look of someone whose carefully constructed world had just collapsed. "Where is he?" Victoria demanded, trying to push past Elena into the apartment. Elena didn't budge an inch. She's 5'9" and does CrossFit religiously, so Victoria bounced off her like a tennis ball hitting a brick wall. "He's not here, but I am, and we're going to have a conversation," Elena said, with the kind of calm that precedes total destruction. "I need to talk to him about the wedding," Victoria insisted desperately. "He can't just cancel everything like this." Elena laughed. The kind of laugh that precedes verbal devastation. "Actually, he can. That's what happens when you cheat. Actions meet consequences. Revolutionary concept, I know." Victoria's face flushed red with anger. "You don't understand our relationship. I understand you invited your side piece to his birthday dinner with flowers," Elena replied with surgical precision. "I understand you gave him access to my brother's house without permission. I understand you're so entitled you think adultery comes with severance pay." "It's not that simple," Victoria protested weakly. "Oh, but it is. Beautifully simple," Elena said, stepping closer. "You cheated, you got caught, you lost. Game over." That's when Victoria deployed her signature movie, the crying manipulation tactic that had probably worked on people her entire life. "My parents already paid for everything. We're out $18,000, she sobbed. Elena stepped closer, and her voice dropped to that terrifying attorney tone that makes defendants confess to crimes they didn't commit. "Maybe your parents should have invested that money in teaching their daughter some character instead of a wedding for a cheater." "You're just like him, cold and heartless," Victoria shot back through her tears. "Honey, I'm nothing like my brother," Elena replied with devastating calm. "He's nice. He gave you years of his life, access to his business connections, and a ring you never deserved. Me? I saw through your performance on day one. I told him you were trouble, but he's too good-hearted to listen to his big sister." "You never liked me," Victoria accused. "Because you're a user," Elena stated matter-of-factly. "You used his business expertise, his marketing knowledge, his house for your affair, and his generosity to fund your lifestyle. You're a parasite in designer clothes." Victoria was crying harder now, but Elena wasn't finished with her systematic destruction. "You want to know what I really think?" Elena continued relentlessly. "I think you're pathetic. You had a good man who loved you, supported your career, and was planning to marry you. And you threw it all away for what? An ex-boyfriend who stuck you with a restaurant check and ghosted you?" "I made a mistake," Victoria whispered. "No, you made choices," Elena corrected her. "Deliberate, calculated choices over months. You chose to give Brandon access to my brother's house. You chose to plan this humiliation dinner. You chose to prioritize your ex over your fiancé. Now you're choosing to harass his family instead of facing consequences like an adult." "I just need to explain," Victoria pleaded desperately. "Explain what?" Elena's voice was ice cold now. "How you accidentally fell on Brandon's dick repeatedly while my brother was working to pay for your ring? How you accidentally planned a romantic reunion at his birthday dinner? How you accidentally decided to humiliate the best thing that ever happened to you?" Victoria made one last desperate attempt. "You don't understand what it's like to have history with someone." Elena's response was absolutely devastating. "I understand what loyalty means. Clearly you don't. Now get off my property before I call the police for harassment. And next time you want to play victim, remember that security cameras don't lie." 4 days after Elena's complete demolition of Victoria, my phone started ringing like a fire alarm. I was in a client meeting installing a security system for a tech startup when the frantic texts began flooding in. "What did you do?" Victoria's messages read, "There's water everywhere in my apartment. The entire ceiling collapsed. My laptop is destroyed. My furniture is ruined. Call me back now." But the water damage was just the opening act of what was about to become a much larger production. Between Victoria's panicked messages, I was getting a different kind of storm from her family members, who apparently felt entitled to weigh in on our situation. Her mother called first with righteous indignation. "How dare you embarrass our family like this? We've already invested in your future together." Her father was more direct in his approach. "Son, we need to discuss financial compensation for the deposits we've lost due to your impulsive decision." Then Melissa chimed in with her characteristic entitlement. "You humiliated Victoria in front of everyone. You owe us money for this disaster." The actual water situation was both more and less dramatic than I'd expected. The plumber had discovered a significant leak in the shared wall between my rental unit and Victoria's apartment. The pipe had been slowly deteriorating for months, causing hidden water damage behind the walls that nobody knew about. When they opened everything up to investigate the problem, all that accumulated water suddenly had somewhere to go. The building management declared both apartments temporarily uninhabitable until repairs could be completed, with an estimated timeline of 6 to 8 weeks minimum. The water had destroyed Victoria's hardwood floors, ruined most of her furniture, and turned her bedroom into what Trevor later described as an expensive indoor swimming pool. While Victoria dealt with her literal flood, I was managing the emotional tsunami from her family. They were demanding that I reimburse them for the $18,000 they'd put toward wedding expenses, venue deposit, catering, flowers, the works. Her mother actually used the phrase breach of contract, like we were business partners instead of a couple that had fallen apart. You can't just cancel a wedding and expect us to absorb the financial consequences, her father argued over the phone with the confidence of someone who'd clearly never dealt with adultery before. Actually, I can, I replied calmly. That's exactly how it works when your daughter cheats. Consider it tuition for a very expensive lesson in parenting. When Victoria finally called that evening, I answered on the first ring just to hear what she'd come up with. "Where am I supposed to live?" she demanded, like her housing situation was somehow my responsibility. "I hear Brandon has a nice place," I replied. "You seemed comfortable making yourself at home there. My parents want you to reimburse them for the wedding deposits." "Your parents can want whatever they like," I said. "I wanted a faithful fiancé, but we don't always get what we want." "You still owe us money," she insisted. "I don't owe you anything except this conversation ending. Oh, and I'll need that engagement ring back." "What ring?" she asked, like she didn't know exactly what ring I was talking about. "The $9,500 engagement ring currently on your finger. Since we're not getting married, I'll need that returned." "This is my ring. You gave it to me," she protested. "I gave it to my fiancé. You're not my fiancé anymore. Legally, engagement rings are conditional gifts. No marriage, no ring." "I'm not giving it back." "We'll see about that," I said and hung up. I immediately called my sister. "Illinois law is crystal clear about engagement rings," Elena explained with obvious satisfaction. "They're conditional gifts that must be returned if the marriage doesn't happen, regardless of who ends the engagement or why." 3 days later, Victoria was served with legal papers demanding return of the ring. The beautiful irony? Her parents had to pay for her lawyer because the apartment flood had wiped out her emergency savings. Elena's commentary when I updated her was priceless. "So let me understand this correctly. She's homeless, being sued for a ring. Her parents are out 18 grand, and Brandon ghosted her after sticking him with the dinner bill. This is better than winning the lottery." Meanwhile, Trevor had been keeping tabs on the Brandon situation through our mutual friends, and apparently there was much more to that story than any of us had realized. 3 weeks after the water damage incident, I was having coffee with Sophia. She'd reached out after hearing about the birthday dinner disaster through our friend network, wanting to check on me and make sure I was handling everything okay. "That whole dinner thing sounded absolutely insane," she said with genuine concern. "Who brings flowers to their ex at someone else's birthday party?" We ended up talking for 4 hours straight. Sophia was everything Victoria wasn't straightforward, genuinely supportive, and refreshingly honest about relationships. She admitted that she'd always thought Victoria was self-centered, but had never said anything because I seemed happy with her. "She treated you like an accessory half the time," Sophia said bluntly. "Like you were there to make her look good rather than being an actual partner." We started spending more time together after that. Nothing romantic initially, just friends reconnecting and me appreciating what honest communication felt like after months of manipulation. Sophia was impressed by my business, thought my security setup was genuinely cool, and never once tried to optimize my brand presence for maximum market penetration. Meanwhile, the legal battle over the ring was proceeding exactly as expected. My lawyer filed a straightforward motion for return of conditional gift, while Victoria's attorney had to argue that adultery somehow entitled her to keep a $9,500 ring. The judge was not impressed with their creative legal theory. "Your Honor," her lawyer argued desperately, "my client received this ring as a gift with reasonable expectation of marriage." "Your Honor," my attorney responded calmly, "the defendant had a reasonable expectation of fidelity, which was systematically violated in the plaintiff's own home as documented by extensive security footage." Case closed. The judge ordered immediate return of the ring plus court costs. Victoria's parents ended up paying another $3,200 in legal fees on top of the $18,000 they'd already lost on wedding deposits. Once I got the ring back, I sold it immediately. $9,500 bought me the most incredible gaming setup imaginable. Top-tier graphics card, 4K monitor, premium sound system, the works. Trevor and I started having legendary gaming sessions in my home office, with Max usually joining us, sleeping on his bed next to my gaming chair, and occasionally waking up to bark at explosion sounds. "Best investment you ever made," Trevor said during one of our Call of Duty marathons. "This is infinitely better than being married to Princess PowerPoint." But the real bombshell came from Trevor's intelligence network. Our mutual friends had been following the Victoria Brandon situation with the fascination of a daytime soap opera, and what they discovered was absolutely mind-blowing. Turns out Brandon wasn't just some commitment-phobic ex-boyfriend. Brandon was married, had been for 3 years. His wife, Jennifer, worked for an international consulting firm and spent most of the year traveling between offices in different countries. Brandon had been living a complete double life, playing the single guy around town while his wife was overseas for work. The birthday dinner disaster had triggered a chain reaction that nobody saw coming. When Brandon got stuck with that $520 restaurant bill, he had to use the credit card he shared with his wife. Jennifer saw the charge for an expensive dinner for 12 people and called to ask about it. Brandon's explanation didn't add up, so Jennifer did what any suspicious spouse would do. She investigated. She found text messages between Brandon and Victoria on their shared phone plan. She discovered photos on his cloud storage that definitely weren't work-related. She uncovered hotel receipts and restaurant charges that didn't match his claimed schedule when she was out of town. Jennifer filed for divorce exactly 3 weeks after my birthday dinner. She had enough evidence of adultery to take Brandon for everything he was worth, and the divorce was finalized in record time because Illinois still recognizes adultery as grounds for divorce, and Jennifer's evidence was absolutely overwhelming. Brandon lost the house, half his assets, and his reputation. His response to losing everything? He completely ghosted Victoria. Blocked her number, blocked her social media, moved in with a friend, and pretended she didn't exist. Victoria, meanwhile, had bounced between temporary living situations since her apartment flooded. She'd tried staying with Melissa after the water damage, but that lasted exactly 5 days before Melissa kicked her out for creating too much drama. She ended up in an extended stay hotel that was costing almost as much as rent, completely alone and wondering how her life had imploded so spectacularly. Her parents, furious about losing $18,000 and watching their daughter self-destruct, had essentially abandoned her. Her mother actually said, "We raised you better than to throw away a good man for some married loser who won't even return your calls." But the story was far from over. 8 months after my birthday dinner from hell, I married Sophia in a small ceremony that cost half of what Victoria's wedding would have. Sophia's parents were genuinely pleasant people who thought I was a catch. Weird how that works when they've raised a daughter with actual character instead of entitlement and manipulation. Trevor was my best man, and his speech was absolutely hilarious. "To the bride and groom, and to security cameras everywhere," he said, raising his glass. "May your marriage be as solid as the evidence that ended his last relationship." We even included Max in the ceremony as our ring bearer. He wore a tiny tuxedo and only got distracted by squirrels twice during his walk down the aisle. The photographer captured some amazing shots of him trying to eat the centerpiece flowers during the reception, completely oblivious to the fact that he was part of a wedding. The reception was in full swing when I noticed a commotion near the entrance. Security was talking to someone who clearly wasn't on the guest list, and I looked closer to see Victoria arguing with the staff about needing to speak with me urgently. Elena noticed the disturbance too. "Oh, absolutely not. Not today," she said, starting to march toward the situation with the determination of someone who'd been waiting for this moment. But Victoria spotted me first and began making her way across the reception hall, drawing stares from everyone as she moved through the crowd of wedding guests. "We need to talk," she called out over the music when she got close enough. "This is extremely important." Sophia squeezed my hand supportively. "Want me to handle this?" "No, I've got it, but stay close," I replied. Victoria finally reached us, clearly out of breath and visibly upset. She was obviously pregnant, about 7 months along, wearing a dress that was trying to hide the pregnancy but failing completely. "Congratulations," she said with obvious bitterness dripping from every word. "I see you moved on remarkably quickly." "Thanks. You look different," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "We need to talk privately," she insisted. "Whatever you need to say, you can say it here. Sophia is my wife now." Victoria glanced around at all the people watching us, then back at me with desperation in her eyes. "Fine, I'm pregnant," she announced. "Congratulations. I'm sure Brandon will be thrilled to step up," I said calmly. "Brandon won't return my calls. He's completely ghosted me since the divorce," she said, her voice breaking slightly. That's unfortunate. What does this have to do with me? She took a deep breath, and I could see exactly where this was heading before she even opened her mouth. I need your help. This baby, it might be yours. The entire reception hall fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop among 200 wedding guests. Elena appeared beside me like she'd teleported, and Sophia's grip on my hand tightened supportively. I stared at Victoria for a long moment, processing this absolute insanity. Victoria, you want to do this here? At my wedding? In front of all these people? I didn't know where else to find you, she said desperately. So you decided to crash my wedding with this accusation? After some back-and-forth argument that I won't bore you with, involving her claiming she just needed help and me pointing out the timing didn't make sense. I finally said, you know what? Fine, but before anything else, I want a paternity test. DNA doesn't lie. Victoria's face went pale. We don't necessarily need to. Oh, we absolutely need to, I cut her off firmly. If you're so confident this baby might be mine, then you won't have any problem proving it. I just thought maybe you'd want to help, she said weakly. Help with what? A baby that's not mine from a woman who cheated on me for months in my own house? I laughed. The only thing I'm helping with is proving that you're still the same liar you've always been. Elena was grinning like it was Christmas morning. I'll have the paperwork ready by morning. Victoria started backing away from us. You're making a huge mistake. When that test comes back, you're going to regret this. Security finally moved in to escort her out, but not before she shouted, "You'll be hearing from me when you realize the truth!" The reception continued after she left, but everyone was buzzing about the drama. Our friends couldn't believe the audacity of crashing a wedding with a paternity claim. Trevor found me at the bar later. Dude, that was intense. You really think there's any chance? He asked. I looked across the room at Sophia, who was laughing with Elena about something, completely unfazed by the drama. Then I glanced at Max, who was somewhere under a table eating dropped wedding cake. We'll find out tomorrow morning, I said. But either way, I know exactly who my real family is. The paternity test was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp the next morning. Whatever the results showed, my life with Sophia was just beginning, and Victoria's desperate manipulation was finally going to have a definitive answer. Some birthday wishes really do come true, just not always the way you expect them to. So that's my story. The test is scheduled for first thing tomorrow morning, and honestly, I have no idea what to expect. Part of me is confident it's not mine based on timing and her history of lies, but there's this small voice in the back of my head asking, what if? Either way, I've got a gaming rig that melts pixels, a wife who actually respects me, and a dog who still thinks cardboard helmets are high fashion. Whatever that test says tomorrow, I've already won in every way that matters. The test will either confirm what I already know, that Victoria is still the same manipulative liar she's always been, or it will change everything completely and force me to deal with an entirely new set of complications. But after everything I've been through, from the birthday dinner humiliation, to the security footage revelations, to the legal battles over the engagement ring, I'm ready for whatever answer comes back. We'll update with the results when they come in. This has been one hell of a ride, and I have a feeling it's not quite over yet. But no matter what happens, I know I made the right choice that night at the restaurant when I decided to stop being a doormat and start standing up for myself. Looking back, I can see all the red flags I should have noticed earlier. The constant Brandon mentions, the PowerPoint presentations about my own business, the way she treated our relationship like a corporate merger instead of a partnership. But sometimes, you need to see the whole picture before you can understand what you were really looking at. Trevor was right from the beginning when he said she was colonizing my life one presentation at a time. Elena was right when she said Victoria was using me as a placeholder until Brandon came back. And Max was just happy to have treats and didn't really have an opinion on the human drama unfolding around him. The irony is that if Victoria had just been honest and faithful, she would have had everything she claimed to want: a successful husband, a beautiful wedding, and a stable future. Instead, she chose deception and ended up with nothing but legal bills and a pregnancy from a married man who won't return her calls. As for me, I learned that security cameras don't just protect your property. Sometimes they protect your entire future from people who don't deserve to be part of it. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just living well and letting karma handle the details. Tomorrow morning will bring answers, one way or another. But tonight, I'm going home to my wife, my dog, and my epic gaming setup, knowing that whatever happens next, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.